Welcome to Echo Forge, dark fantasy and sci-fi stories from the edges of forgotten worlds. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next vision. Now, let's step through the gate.
They called him Mercy because the people who hired him liked the joke. It let them say the word with clean mouths, as if naming a thing could change its nature, as if blood behaved differently when you spoke softly over it, as if a knife became a kindness when you paid for it in polished coin. Mercy never corrected them. He did the work. He took the money. He walked back into the city with his hood up and his hands empty, and he tried, every night, every time, to leave what he'd done behind him like a dropped cloak. The city would not let him. Neither would the ink, the stain. The first man was a slaver, not the kind who wore chains openly and spat in the marketplace. Those were loud, easy to hate. This one wore linen. This one owned warehouses. This one called cages contracts, and bodies units, and hunger motivation. Mercy found him in a counting room with a lamp burning late, quill scratching like an insect on parchment. The man looked up when Mercy stepped in. His eyes flicked to the door, to the window, to the shadows behind Mercy's shoulder. "You're—" he started. Mercy didn't answer. He had learned that names were ropes. If you took one in your mouth, it could pull you toward pity. He crossed the room in 3 silent steps and put the knife under the man's jaw. The slaver went rigid. He smelled of ink and spice and fear. "Please," the slaver whispered. "You don't understand. I keep them fed. I keep them alive. Without me." Mercy pushed. The knife slid in like it had been waiting for the right place. The slaver made a wet sound, a surprised gurgle, as if the world had broken a rule. His hands clawed at Mercy's wrists, and then his fingers went slack. Mercy eased him down, careful, habit, not compassion, and wiped the blade on the man's sleeve. When he left, the lamp still burned. In the alley behind the warehouse, Mercy paused because a sound reached him. Iron shifting, metal complaining. A chain snapped. Not in the counting room, not in his hands. Somewhere deeper in the block, beyond the wall, he heard a rush of movement and a single sharp cry like breath finally taken. Mercy told himself it was coincidence. Back in his rented room, he lit a candle and rolled up his sleeves to scrub at invisible blood. That was when he saw it. A faint gray shadow sunk into the skin of his right forearm. Not a bruise, not dirt. A mark like ink soaked too deep to wash. It was the exact shape of the hand that had held the knife. He rubbed, he scraped, he scalded. The shadow did not fade. It wasn't just a stain, it was writing. At first it was a smear, an ugly thumbprint. But when he stared in the candlelight, he could see edges, thin lines like a quill had traced them under his skin. They were not letters from any script he knew. They were shapes, hooks, loops. A tally made by something that didn't need words to remember. The next day, Mother Gray watched him trace it. Her eyes were pale as river stones, too calm for a woman who ran a house full of killers. "Don't pick at it," she said, almost amused. "You'll only irritate it." "What is it?" Mercy demanded. He hated how the question sounded like pleading. "You could call it armor," she said. "You could call it the price. Every blade needs a sheath, Mercy. That's yours." He didn't like that answer, but he noticed, after, that the stain did more than sit there. When he took another job, the magistrate who sold verdicts like bread, the shadow crept a little further, across the back of his hand, up toward his elbow. The magistrate had a private court. Quiet, expensive, thick rugs to swallow screams. He died with a gold ring still on his finger, still warm from the seal he'd pressed into wax minutes earlier. Mercy left, and by the time he reached the street, the courthouse bells began to ring. Not the proper peal for a judgment. Something ugly, a clanging, a frantic summoning. People spilled out of side doors carrying armfuls of ledgers, eyes wide as if the books had turned on them. Mercy caught a glimpse through a window, shelves of records shedding pages like skin, ink bleeding across parchment in long, dark tears. In the space of a breath, every bribe the magistrate had taken became a smear across the page that could not be ignored. Names, real names, not titles, surfaced where there had been polite phrases. Mercy kept walking. He told himself it wasn't his problem. The next job was a priest with a locked confessional, a man who demanded purity from the poor and bought silence from the desperate, a man who liked hearing sins because it made him feel taller. Mercy slipped into the chapel after midnight. The priest woke on the altar. "You're here for absolution," he rasped, seeing Mercy's blade, misunderstanding as only the arrogant can. Mercy shook his head once. The priest's hands fluttered up, palms out. "Mercy," he said, because everyone knew the name in that trade. "I can pay. I can—" Mercy cut his throat. The priest thrashed, knocking candles over. Hot wax splashed like tears. The man tried to speak as he died, but his mouth produced only wet bubbles and half-swallowed sound. Mercy watched until it was done. When he left, the chapel door slammed behind him, hard enough to shudder the old hinges. From inside he heard it, the click of a lock. Then another, and another, like a line of doors sealing shut. By morning, men and women stood outside the chapel demanding entry, fists pounding on the wood. They couldn't get in, not to pray, not to confess, not to seek comfort. The doors refused them as if the house had learned what was done in its shadow and had decided it would not be used like that again. Mercy didn't go back to see if it ever opened. He took jobs. That was what he did. The stain became a map. It tracked his veins like dark glass. In certain lights, he could swear he saw the lines pulsing faintly, as if echoing a heart that wasn't his. And it began to itch when he was near certain kinds of evil. Not all evil, not petty theft, not hungry violence, not the sharp, stupid sins of people who were cornered. Number. It itched for the ones who called themselves necessary, for the ones who made harm into a system. When Mercy killed a captain who enjoyed breaking fingers, the kind of man who called it discipline, the stain warmed like coals in his skin. The captain's hands were big, scarred, proud. He died on his knees in the back room of a tavern. Mercy left. Half an hour later, as Mercy passed a fountain, he saw a man stumble and fall, clutching his own hands as if seized by an invisible grip. "Cramp," someone muttered. But Mercy saw the truth in the man's face. Sudden, shocking helplessness. Fingers curled inwards as if remembering pain they'd inflicted. Joints locking, knuckles grinding. Mercy hurried on before anyone could look too hard at him. In his room, he stripped his shirt and stared at his arm in the mirror. The ink had reached his shoulder. It was no longer a mark. It was a ledger. Lines and hooks and dark veins, each one distinct, each one placed with intention. It didn't spread like rot. It wrote like memory. Mercy thought of it as a debt he hadn't agreed to owe. He didn't mention it to Mother Gray again. He'd asked once. You didn't ask twice. The contract. By the time the noble's contract came, Mercy had stopped hoping the stain would go away. He was learning instead how to live around it like a man living with a knife lodged in his ribs. Careful movements, shallow breaths, pretending it didn't hurt until he forgot what normal felt like. Mother Gray sent for him late, when the house had quieted and the apprentices slept with blades under their pillows. Dress clean, she told him. This one cares about appearances. She didn't say why, but she didn't have to. The house they brought him to was quiet. Not the poor quiet of empty cupboards, but the rich quiet of thick carpets and thick doors that kept other people's noise out. A man waited inside wearing silk and a bored expression. Mercy, he said, as if tasting the name. He did not offer his own. Men like him rarely did. You come recommended. Mercy stood, still as a blade. The man slid a single sheet across the table. A name, an address, an age. 8. Mercy's mouth went dry. You've written this wrong, he said, voice steady only because he'd trained it so. This is... He didn't want to say the word. A child, the man supplied, as if Mercy had struggled to name a cup. Yes. His lips curved. It did not reach his eyes. Lord Vardham's youngest, he went on. He has been slow, answering certain obligations. Our patience is not infinite. We require a reminder. Kill him, Mercy said. That, at least, made sense. Pain for debt. A harsh equation, but one the world understood. The ink under his skin did not like it, but it understood the math. The man laughed, low. Men like Vardem are used to threats against their own skins, he said. They wear danger like jewelry. But what they love? That's rarer coin. One they do not spend casually. His gaze sharpened. End the daughter, he said, in a way he cannot mistake. And he and others like him will remember their place. Mercy looked down at the paper. He saw the name. He imagined, involuntarily, the shape of her letters on a school slate. The way a child's hand hesitated on the curve of a word it had only recently learned. What has she done? He asked. It slipped out before he could stop it. The noble blinked, uncomprehending. What she has done, Mercy repeated, and there was a roughness in his throat now, a crack he hadn't allowed anyone to see in years, to earn a knife. The man's expression shifted, brief irritation, like a fly had landed near his wine. She has been born in the wrong house, he said. Don't moralize at me, Mercy. You're not paid to judge. You're paid to deliver. Mercy's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. The ink under his skin stirred. Not a spread. A purr. It was the most horrible part. The way the stain responded to this. To innocence priced like a commodity, as if this were a delicacy. Mercy forced himself to breathe. You said you wanted a reminder, he said carefully. I said I wanted a lesson, the man corrected. A clean one. A decisive one. Clean. Mercy almost laughed. Vardem will know it was you, Mercy said. He will come hunting. The man waved a hand. Let him, he said. Let him rage. Let him swing at shadows. The point is not the aftermath. The point is the message. He leaned forward. His eyes were the color of old coins. And besides, he said softly, voice lowering as if sharing a secret, there are traditions in older houses, old rites. The killing of a child is a seal, Mercy, a lock. It changes a man. Mercy felt cold spread along his spine. A seal, Mercy echoed. The man's smile sharpened. Don't look so startled, he said. You know what you carry. You know what people whisper. That you don't just kill. You take. You make the world quieter. He tapped the paper with a manicured finger. This will make you ours, he said, almost reverent. Completely. No more hesitation. No more inconvenient conscience. A man cannot justify that act and remain whole, and that fracture is useful. Mercy's jaw clenched hard enough to ache. So that was it. The ink wasn't just punishment. It was a leash. And someone wanted the final knot. What happens if I refuse? Mercy asked. The man shrugged. Then you will be refusing your own nature, he said. And you will learn what happens when a tool decides it's a person. He stood, smoothing his sleeve. You will do it, he said. You always do. Mercy stared at the paper until the letters blurred. The ink in his arm warmed, eager. It wrote a new line, slow and satisfied, as if it already knew the ending. Mercy folded the contract and tucked it away. He left without another word, because if he opened his mouth, he was afraid something would come out that he couldn't take back. Outside, the night air tasted of smoke and distant rain. Mercy walked. The city watched him. And somewhere inside his skin, the ledger waited for him to complete the pattern. The girl with the green ribbon. Lord Vardem's house had a red door and a tree in the courtyard. Mercy found it easily enough. A solid house in the noble quarter, guarded not by men with spears, but by the assumption that no one would dare. Servants came and went with baskets and ledgers. The usual. Mercy did what he always did. He watched. From the shadow of a shrine across the street, its old stone god worn nearly faceless by time, he watched. He saw the father first, Vardem, middle years, graying at the temples, hands strong enough to lift crates despite the rings, the lines at the corners of his eyes more from squinting at the sun than from scowling. He saw the wife, Sarah, flour on her cheeks sometimes when she stepped into the courtyard with bread dough on her hands, ink on her fingers when she sat by the window, writing letters. And then he saw Lena. She announced herself first with sound, a high, delighted squeal, the kind children make when they see something the world hasn't yet trained them to be ashamed of. Mercy looked up. She was small for 8, all knees and elbows, dark hair in 2 messy braids that never seemed to lie flat. She wore a green ribbon around her wrist, tied in a careful knot that looked like it had been retied a dozen times. She chased a cat across the courtyard and tripped, sprawling on the stones. She laughed. Not the brittle laugh of someone performing for adults. A real laugh, loud enough that a servant hissed at her to be quiet, and Lena stuck out her tongue and ran away. Mercy felt something in his chest tighten. The ink in his arms stirred, not with hunger this time, with confusion. He watched her for hours. He learned her patterns the way he always did. She woke early, She liked the courtyard tree. She climbed it badly and fell often. She had a stubborn streak like a nail. Once it was driven, you couldn't pull it without tearing something. She liked to sit on the steps and listen to her mother hum while kneading dough. She liked to follow her father around with questions, chattering until he surrendered and carried her on his shoulders. Vardem tried to look stern. He failed. At dusk, Lena and her mother hung lanterns in the tree. Lena reached too high and the lantern slipped. Vardem caught it before it shattered and Lena cheered like he'd slain a dragon. Mercy sat in shadow and felt his stomach twist. He had killed men who deserved to die. He had killed men who did not. He had never been asked to kill a child. Not like this. Not as a message. Not as a seal. He told himself, I am not here to judge. But the lie tasted sour. 2 nights later, he crossed the street. He didn't go in through the front door. He never did. He moved over the roof tiles, silent as falling ash, and found the window to Lena's room, the one he'd watched her lean out of to whisper secrets to the cat. He eased it open. The room smelled of soap and paper. Lena slept on her side with her fists tucked under her chin, mouth slightly open. A doll lay discarded on the floor. A half-finished drawing sat on the table. A crude house with stick figures, all smiling. Mercy stood at the foot of her bed. He could end it in a heartbeat. A clean cut. No scream. No chase. No mess. He would leave. He would be paid. He would carry the ink until it finished claiming him. The stain warmed down his arm as if urging him. He lifted the knife. Lena shifted. Her eyes fluttered open. For a second, she stared at him in the dim light. Mercy froze. He expected the scream, the panic, the terror. Instead, Lena blinked slowly, then sat up, hair sticking out in every direction. You're not one of the servants, she said, matter of fact, as if identifying a bird. Mercy swallowed. No, he said. Lena tilted her head. Are you a thief? She asked, voice bright with interest. Mercy's mouth tightened. Yes, he said, because it was easier than explaining what he really was. Lena nodded, satisfied. My brother says thieves live in the walls, she whispered. But I told him that was stupid. Walls don't have rooms inside them. Mercy didn't answer. Lena looked at his hands. Her gaze landed on the knife. Her eyes widened a fraction. Oh, she whispered, and something in her voice shifted. Not fear, not yet, but recognition that this was not a game. Her hand drifted to the green ribbon around her wrist. She rubbed the knot with her thumb. What do you want? She asked. Mercy stared at her. He could not find words. I can give you my sweets, Lena offered quickly, leaning over to pull open a drawer. I have lemon ones. I saved them. Or... Stop, Mercy said, sharper than he intended. Lena froze. Mercy's gaze flicked to the ribbon. What's that? He asked, because his mind needed something, anything to latch onto that wasn't the contract burning in his pocket. Lena glanced down and smiled, small and proud. It's a promise, she whispered. Mama tied it when I got sick last winter. She said it was to keep the bad dreams away, and when I wake up scared, I touch it and I remember I'm still here. Mercy's throat tightened. The ink under his skin twitched like a creature disturbed. Lena watched him. studying his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You look sad," she said. Mercy's jaw clenched hard enough to ache. "I'm not," he lied. Lena shrugged. "My brother says grown-ups lie all the time," she said. "He says it's because they're afraid." Mercy's fingers tightened on the knife. He had never feared a man. He had never feared death. But right now, with a child watching him in lamplight, he was terrified of himself. Lena's gaze flicked to the knife again. Her voice dropped. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked. There it was. Simple. Clean. No philosophy. No euphemism. The truth. Mercy stood very still. He felt the contract in his pocket like a stone. He felt the ink in his arm like a hand closing around his bones. He thought of the noble's words. A seal. A lock. A fracture useful. He thought of Mother Gray's pale eyes. Every blade needs a sheath. And he thought of Lena touching her ribbon to remember she was still here. Mercy lowered the knife. "No," he said. Lena's shoulders sagged with a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Oh," she said again, softer. "Okay." Then, because she was a child, and children were ridiculous and brave in ways adults forgot, she added, "Do you want a lemon sweet?" Mercy almost laughed. Instead, something hot stung his eyes. He turned his head so she wouldn't see. "I can't," he said. Lena frowned. "Because you're a thief," she whispered. "Because," Mercy said, and his voice cracked. "I shouldn't be here." He backed toward the window. Lena watched him, eyes wide, ribbon clenched in her fist. "Will you come back?" she asked. "Because children believe in returns the way the world does not." Mercy didn't answer. He slipped out into the night. He ran across rooftops until his lungs burned. In the alley behind the shrine, he pressed his back to the cold stone and slid down to sit on the wet ground. He shook. The ink in his arm went cold. Not satisfied, not purring. Angry. It began to itch like a swarm of ants under his skin. And in the candlelight of his mind, he saw it. The ledger line that had started to form for this contract, thick, hungry, eager for innocence, stalling mid-stroke. The ink had expected him to finish the sentence. He had refused. Now it didn't know what to do with that refusal. Mercy stared at his hands until the shaking slowed. He had broken a rule. He didn't yet know which one. The world that pays for knives. Mercy returned to Mother Gray's house before dawn. The apprentices were still asleep. The corridors smelled of oil and steel and old blood scrubbed from stone. Mother Gray waited in the kitchen with a cup of tea that steamed as if it had never known cold. "You're late," she said. Mercy dropped the folded contract on the table. "I won't do it," he said. Mother Gray looked at the paper as if it were a dead insect. She didn't touch it. "You will," she said, calm as weather. Mercy's hands curled. "No," he repeated, and he hated how small the word sounded against the weight of everything pressing in. Mother Gray lifted her gaze. Her eyes were not cruel. That was what made her terrifying. "You've done worse," she said softly. Mercy flinched. "Worse than a child?" he snapped. Mother Gray's expression barely shifted. "Worse than an innocent," she corrected, gentle as a teacher. Innocence is a word people use when they want to pretend consequences are unfair. There is only debt, There is only payment. Mercy leaned forward, voice low. This isn't debt, he said. It's theater. Mother Gray's mouth curved. Everything is theater, she said. Even your outrage. Mercy's hand shot out and he yanked up his sleeve, slamming his forearm down on the table. The inked ledger gleamed dark in the dim light. Tell me what this is, he demanded. Mother Gray's gaze drifted to the stain. For the first time, something like interest flickered across her face. It likes you, she said. Mercy's stomach turned. It's a parasite, he spat. Mother Gray shrugged. All power is parasitic, she said. It feeds on something. Fear, faith, money, blood. This one feeds on justification. Mercy froze. Mother Gray sipped her tea. You thought it fed on killing, she said. No, it feeds on the story you tell yourself while you do it. Mercy's voice went hoarse. And the child? He asked. Mother Gray set the cup down with careful precision. The child is a lock, she said, echoing the noble's words without surprise, as if she had known all along. A seal, a clean fracture. Once you do that, you can never tell yourself you are anything but what you are. The ink will have you. Completely. Mercy's breath came shallow. So that's why they want it, he said. Not for Vardem. Oh, Vardem will suffer, Mother Gray said, dismissive. But this isn't about him. It's about you. Mercy stared at her. You're selling me, he said. Mother Gray's eyes were steady. I'm managing you, she corrected. The same way I manage every blade in this house. Sharp things don't get to decide where they cut. They're directed. Mercy's hands trembled. I said no, he whispered. Mother Gray leaned in. You don't get to say no, she said, quiet. Not anymore. The ink under Mercy's skin warmed, as if agreeing with her. Mercy yanked his arm back. He stood so fast the chair scraped. I won't, he said, and the words were not a plea now. They were a promise. Not for them. Mother Gray watched him a long moment. Then she sighed, almost fond. Fox, she called, not raising her voice. Footsteps moved in the corridor. A lean man stepped into the doorway like he'd been waiting there the whole time. Fox had a smile that belonged on a different face. He wore it like a mask someone had forced on him as a child and never let him take off. Behind him came Shade. Shade didn't smile. Shade moved like a shadow had learned how to hold a knife. Mother Gray gestured to the contract. He's refusing, she said. Fox's smile widened. Oh, he said. That's adorable. Shade's eyes flicked to Mercy's arm. You're itching, Shade observed. Mercy's jaw clenched. Fox sauntered forward. Look, Fox said, voice easy. You don't want to make this hard. We all get that you've got feelings. But this is business. You've killed men for less than the coin on that paper. Mercy stared at him. And you? Mercy asked, voice cold. Would you do it? Fox's eyes glittered. Yes, he said immediately. I would, because I don't pretend I'm a hero. Shade didn't answer. That was answer enough. Mercy's stomach twisted. Mother Gray lifted her cup again, indifferent. You have until tonight, she said. Either you do it and the ink settles, or someone else does it, and the ink punishes you for refusing its meal. Mercy's fingers curled. Punishes how? He asked. Mother Gray's gaze sharpened a fraction. You're learning, she said. Fox chuckled. I've seen it, he said lightly. The ink doesn't like being denied. It starts collecting its debt from you instead of the guilty. Shade's voice was low. It will write on your heart, he said, not your skin. Mercy's mouth went dry. Mother Gray stood, cup in hand. I don't enjoy this part, she said, almost bored. But you're not the first blade to imagine it has a choice. She brushed past Mercy. As she reached the doorway, she paused. Oh, she said, as if remembering something small. If you run, the city will find you. And if the city doesn't, the ink will. Then she was gone. Fox and Shade remained. Fox's grin softened just a touch into something almost pitying. Do the job, he said. Save yourself the pain. Mercy stared at them both, at their calm, at the ease with which they spoke about killing a child like it was a late delivery. He realized in that moment what kind of evil they were. Not the loud kind, the normalized kind, the kind that made horror ordinary, and the ink in Mercy's arm, his ledger, itched like it recognized them as kin. Mercy left the kitchen. He went to his room. He shut the door. He sat on the bed and stared at his stained arm until the daylight grew strong. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not to the gods. He didn't believe they listened. He prayed to the part of himself that was still human. Give me a way out that doesn't kill her. The ink in his arm answered with a slow, hungry pulse, as if laughing. The ledger. Mercy didn't sleep. He walked the city instead, hood up, moving through crowds like smoke. He watched people buy bread and argue over fish and kiss in alleyways and drag children by the wrist. He watched a man slap his apprentice for dropping a tray. He watched a woman spit at a beggar. Small cruelties, ordinary ones. The ink in his arm didn't stir for them. It didn't care about petty sins. It wanted systems. It wanted the evils that made themselves permanent. Mercy found himself at the old shrine again. The faceless stone god with its worn hands outstretched, as if asking for something it would never receive. He sat on the steps and listened to the city breathe, and he noticed something he hadn't before. The ink wasn't random. Each line on his arm corresponded to a kind of harm. The slaver's line had a chain hook pattern. The magistrate's line branched like a wax seal. The priest's line looped like a locked door. The captain's line fractured like broken joints. It wasn't just marking him. It was cataloging, keeping a record of what he had cut out of the world, a ledger of debts paid. But there was another side to it, one Mercy had only glimpsed and refused to name. When those men died, consequences rippled outward, chains snapped, ledgers bled, doors sealed, hands curled. Not always in ways Mercy saw directly, but enough to make a pattern. The evil they created returned to them or unraveled around them like a net ripped open. It wasn't mercy, it was symmetry, and it made Mercy sick. Because if the ink could return harm, if it could shape consequence, then it wasn't merely a stain, it was an engine, and someone was trying to steer it. Mercy pressed his palm to the shrine's cold stone. Why me? he whispered. The stone said nothing. The ink pulsed, warm as breath, as if the answer was obvious. Because you hold the knife. Because he was the hand the world used when it wanted to hurt itself and call it order. Mercy lowered his head. He thought of Lena's ribbon, a promise tied against bad dreams. He thought of the noble's smooth voice, a seal, a lock. He thought of Mother Grey. It feeds on justification. So the ink didn't need blood. It needed the moment a man lies to himself. The child contract was designed to shatter Mercy's ability to lie. After that, the ink would have him entirely. A man who could no longer pretend he was anything but a monster was easy to drive, easy to point, easy to unleash. Mercy's stomach turned. He stood. He had a choice. Not between killing and not killing, between becoming a tool forever or breaking in a different way. Mercy went back toward Vardam's house, not with a knife drawn, with his hands empty. The night's work. The red door was shut. The courtyard tree was dark, lanterns unlit. Mercy climbed the roof and slipped through Lena's window again. The room was dim, lit only by a small candle burning low on the table. Lena was awake. She sat on her bed with the covers pulled to her chin, ribbon clutched in her hand. When she saw Mercy, her eyes widened. "You came back," she whispered. Mercy's throat tightened. "I did," he said. Lena stared at his hands. "No knife?" she asked, almost accusing. Mercy swallowed. "I have one," he said, "but it's not for you." Lena's brow furrowed. "That doesn't make sense," she whispered. Mercy stepped closer, slow, careful. "I need you to listen," he said. Lena nodded, serious now. Mercy took a breath. "I was paid to hurt you," he said, voice low, each word a stone in his mouth. "To make your father suffer." Lena blinked. For a second, she looked like she might not understand. Then her face crumpled, just slightly, and she hugged the ribbon tighter. "My father?" she whispered. "Why?" Mercy shook his head. "It doesn't matter why," he said. "It matters that it's wrong." Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Children were brave like that. She whispered, "Are you going to do it?" Mercy shook his head harder. "No," he said. "I won't." Lena stared at him. "Then why are you here?" she asked. Mercy's mouth went dry. "Because if I don't," he said, "someone else will." Lena's breath hitched. Mercy knelt, bringing himself level with her. "I need you to come with me," he said. "Just for tonight. I'll bring you back. But you can't be here when they come." Lena looked toward the door, then back to Mercy. "They," she whispered. Mercy nodded. Lena's chin trembled. "My mama," she started. Mercy's chest ached. "I know," he said. He didn't have time to explain everything. Time was bleeding away, drop by drop. Lena wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "Will my father be mad?" she asked, because that was the scale her world used. Anger, not assassins. Mercy almost laughed, bitter. "He'll be scared," Mercy said. "And he should be." Lena's eyes widened. "I don't like scared," she whispered. "Neither do I," Mercy said. He reached out. He didn't touch her. He couldn't. Not yet. Come, he said. Lena hesitated. Then she slid out of bed, bare feet on the cold floor. She grabbed a small coat and shoved her arms through, clumsy. She tied her green ribbon tighter around her wrist, not firm. Mercy watched that small ritual like a man watching a prayer. They moved through the house in shadows. Mercy knew the servants' patterns, the guards' blind spots, the creak in the third stair. He carried Lena over that one. Her arms wrapped around his neck, tight. She whispered into his ear, "You smell like rain." Mercy's throat tightened. Outside, the city was damp, air heavy with impending storm. Mercy moved fast, keeping to alleys, to rooftops, to the narrow streets where carts couldn't follow. He didn't go to the shrine. He went somewhere worse. The House of Gray. Because if he was going to end this, he needed to cut the root, not the branch. He slipped in through a side door he knew wouldn't be watched. Mother Gray trusted too much in fear. He led Lena down a corridor lined with sleeping apprentices. Lena's eyes were wide, but she didn't make a sound. At the end of the corridor was the parlor, a room for meetings, a room where contracts were signed, a room where people told themselves stories about necessity until they believed them. Mother Gray waited there, seated like a queen without a crown. Fox leaned against the mantel, flipping a knife in his hand. Shade stood in the corner, still as a statue. And in the center of the room, half seen, half felt, was something else. It sat like a presence behind the air, a pressure, a coldness, a subtle distortion, like the world had been stretched over a shape that didn't belong. Mercy felt his ink respond instantly. It warmed, eager and furious, like a dog straining at a leash. Mother Gray's pale eyes flicked to Lena. For the first time, Mother Gray's calm wavered. Not fear, appraisal. "Bold," she said. Lena shrank behind Mercy, fingers clutching her ribbon so hard her knuckles whitened. Fox's smile widened. "Well," he said softly, "look at you, growing a conscience." Shade's gaze narrowed. "You brought the seal," Shade murmured. Mercy's jaw clenched. "She's not a seal," Mercy said. "She's a child." Mother Gray's eyes were steady. "And you," she said, "are refusing to be what you are." Mercy stepped forward, placing himself fully between Lena and the room. "I refuse to be yours," he said. Mother Gray sighed. "You misunderstand," she said. "No one owns you. The ink owns you. We simply guide it." Mercy's gaze snapped to the distortion in the air. He could feel it now, like a mouth hovering just behind his skin, tasting the moment. It wanted Lena. Not her blood, her innocence. The act of breaking it. The act of making Mercy cross a line he could not return from. Fox chuckled. "Do it and be done," he said. "You'll stop shaking. You'll stop whining. You'll be clean." Clean. Mercy's stomach turned. "No," he said. Mother Gray's voice softened. "You think you're saving her?" she said. "But you're only postponing the inevitable. Vardem will fall. The noble houses will grind on. Someone will always pay for a knife." She leaned forward, eyes pale and unblinking. "This is bigger than you," she said. Mercy swallowed. "Maybe," he said. But this, he lifted his inked arm, the ledger dark against his skin. This is in me, and if it's in me, I can cut it out. Shade's eyes narrowed. You can't, Shade said. Mercy smiled, small and terrible. I can try, he said. Fox's grin faltered. Mother Gray's gaze sharpened just slightly. The distortion in the air pressed closer, eager, hungry, anticipating. It wanted the story Mercy would tell himself as he killed the child. It wanted the justification collapsing into a clean fracture. It wanted to write the final line in his ledger with thick, delighted ink. Mercy felt it. And for the first time, he understood the true shape of his curse. Not a punishment, a mechanism. A thing that turned violence into a ritual, and ritual into control. Mercy stepped forward. He reached behind his back. Not for a weapon, for the folded contract. He pulled it out. Mother Gray's gaze flicked to it. Fox's smile returned, confident. Shade watched like a man watching a trap spring. Mercy held the paper up. This is what you want? He asked. Mother Gray's eyes glinted. It's what you owe, she said. Mercy's fingers tightened on the contract. He felt the ink in his arm pulse. Anticipation. He looked down at Lena. Her eyes were wide, terrified now. But she didn't run. She clutched the ribbon like it was an anchor. Mercy's chest ached. He looked back at Mother Gray. You said the ink feeds on justification, he said. Mother Gray's mouth curved. It does, she said. Mercy nodded slowly. Then it's starving, he said. Fox laughed sharp. Oh, please, he said. Don't make speeches. Just... Mercy tore the contract in half. The sound was small, paper ripping, a whisper. But the room shuddered. The distortion in the air recoiled like a hand yanked away from fire. The ink in Mercy's arm went suddenly cold. Not cold like calm, cold like rage. It surged. Pain lanced through Mercy's shoulder, down his arm, into his chest. He staggered, biting back a cry. Mother Gray's eyes widened, the first real crack in her composure. What are you doing? She snapped. Mercy gasped, clutching his arm. He could feel the ink trying to rewrite itself, scrambling for purchase. It had been denied the seal. Now it turned inward, looking for another story to consume. Fox's grin vanished. Shade stepped forward, blade appearing in his hand like a thought. Stop! Shade hissed. You'll... Mercy's vision blurred. He saw, in flashes, every man he'd killed. Not their faces, their harm, chains, ledgers, locks, broken hands. He felt it all, not as guilt, but as record. The ink dragging the truth through him like a hook. The entity in the air pressed down, furious. It wanted him to justify, to say, I had to say this is my nature, to say I'm a monster anyway. Because that story was food. Mercy clenched his jaw. No, he whispered. He looked at Lena. She stood behind him, trembling, ribbon clenched. He could hear her small breathing. He could hear the blood in his own ears. He reached for the knife at his belt. Fox exhaled, relief flickering. Shade shifted, ready. Mother Gray's gaze went hard, satisfied. Yes, she breathed. Mercy pulled the knife free. Then he turned it and drove it into his own arm. Not a shallow cut, a deep one, right through the thickest vein of ink. Pain exploded. Mercy bit down on a scream so hard he tasted blood. The ink surged toward the wound like liquid shadow, trying to escape, trying to right itself somewhere else. Mercy dragged the blade down, carving through the lines. The ledger split. Darkness welled, not blood, not exactly. Something thicker, something that smoked faintly in the candlelight. The entity shrieked. Not a sound, a sensation, like a bell ringing inside Mercy's skull. Fox stumbled back, hands clapping over his ears. Shade's eyes widened, face tightening. Mother Gray rose, cup forgotten. Her calm shattered. "What have you done?" she hissed. Mercy panted, sweat pouring down his face. He looked up, eyes wild. "I'm paying," he rasped. He plunged the knife again, this time into his chest, just beneath his collarbone, where the ink had begun to creep toward his heart. Pain. Fire. Blackness. He gritted his teeth and forced the blade to cut. He was not trying to die. He was trying to sever the leash. The ink convulsed. For a moment, Mercy felt it. An intelligence, cold and hungry, coiled around his ribs like a snake. It tightened, furious. It wanted him to give in, to justify, to collapse, to become the fracture. Mercy shook, breath ragged. He looked at Lena. She was crying silently now, tears sliding down her cheeks, but her eyes were locked on him, wide and fierce. She touched her ribbon, that small knot, that small promise. Mercy swallowed blood. He forced his voice out through clenched teeth. "This isn't yours," he whispered. Not to Lena, not to Mother Gray, to the thing inside him. The entity pressed down, screaming without sound. Mercy's vision tunneled. He heard Mother Gray shouting orders, distant, muffled. He heard Fox swearing, panicked. He heard Shade moving, blade scraping, steps closer. Mercy raised his inked arm, shaking. He grabbed the torn contract pieces off the floor with blood-slick fingers. He pressed them against his open wound. Paper turned red instantly. Ink, dark, living, writhed. Mercy forced the pieces down, like stuffing a mouth. He looked up at Mother Gray, eyes blazing. "You built a system," he rasped. "You called it necessary." Mother Gray's face twisted. "It is necessary," she snapped. "The world." "The world pays for knives," Mercy interrupted. His voice was hoarse, breaking, but every word landed like iron. "And you taught me to call that mercy." He laughed, wet and bitter. "I'm done lying." The entity screamed again, furious. Mercy felt it trying to jump, trying to leap from him to the nearest willing vessel. Fox. Shade. Mother Gray. Anything that would accept the story. Anything that would justify. Mercy looked at Fox. Fox's hands were shaking. His easy smile was gone. For the first time, Mercy saw what lived under it. A hollow man who had numbed himself so thoroughly he didn't know what feeling was anymore. Mercy looked at Shade. Shade stood rigid, blade ready, but his eyes were wide as if he was seeing something for the first time. Mercy realized suddenly what punishment fit men like them. Not gore, Not torture, not spectacle, awareness. The return of everything they had spent years sanding down. Mercy shoved the knife into the floor to steady himself. He turned toward Lena. She stood frozen. "Run," he whispered. Lena shook her head, sobbing. Mercy's throat tightened. He couldn't carry her now. He could barely stand. But he could do one thing. He could make the ink choose. He raised his blood-slick hand and pointed at Mother Gray. "You," he rasped. Mother Gray froze. The ink in Mercy's wound surged toward his gesture like a hound catching scent. Mother Gray's eyes widened. She stepped back. "No," she breathed, the first hint of fear. Mercy smiled, teeth red. "You fed it," he whispered. "You gave it systems, contracts, justifications." Mother Gray's mouth opened, but no words came out. Because for the first time, her story was collapsing. She had always believed she managed the ink. Now she understood. She had only been close enough to feel important. The ink leapt. Not physically. Something in the air shifted, like pressure relocating. Mother Gray gasped. Her hand flew to her throat. For a second she looked offended, as if the universe had insulted her. Then her face changed. Her pupils dilated. Her breath hitched. Her mouth moved, soundless. Mercy felt it, through his own body, through the severed leash, like a line in the ledger snapping into place. Mother Gray wasn't being punished with pain. She was being stripped of the story she used to soften cruelty. Her own justifications poured out of her mind like blood. She staggered, and the calm fell off her like a cloak. Fox stared, horrified. Shade's blade lowered, just a fraction. Mother Gray's lips parted. And then she spoke. Not the smooth words of a broker, but something raw. "I kept them fed," she whispered, echoing the slaver without knowing it. "I kept them sharp. I kept them useful." Her voice broke. "I made it orderly," she said, desperate. "I made it clean." Clean. Mercy almost laughed. The ink wrapped tighter around her mind. Her eyes rolled back. And when she fell, she didn't fall like a queen. She fell like inventory, like a thing that had spent a lifetime turning people into tools and had finally been turned into one herself. The entity in the air convulsed, furious. It had lost its manager. Now it sought another. Fox stumbled back, shaking his head, voice cracking. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no!" He pressed his hands to his temples as if trying to hold his own thoughts in place. Shade turned, eyes wild. "It's coming," Shade hissed. Mercy could feel it too. The ink, what remained of it, was torn and starving. It wanted a vessel, a story, a lie. Fox was the easiest. Fox's entire life was a lie told with a smile. Fox backed toward the door. "I didn't," he stammered. "I didn't mean, I never." And then he stopped. His face tightened, his jaw clenched. Because the ink had found its hook. Not blood, but denial. Fox's smile tried to return. It failed. He made a sound, halfway between a laugh and a sob. "I did it," he whispered, suddenly, shocking in the quiet. "I did all of it." Shade stared at him. Fox's eyes flooded with tears. I told myself it was just business, he choked. I told myself I was better than the men we killed because I didn't enjoy it. He laughed again, broken. But I did enjoy it, he whispered. Not the blood, the power, the way people looked at me like I was something. He sank to his knees. His hands shook. I'm empty, he said, as if confessing a sin he'd never known he had. There's nothing inside me. I carved it out. Shade took a step back, face pale. This was the punishment that fit Fox. Not death, not pain, the return of feeling. It would kill him faster than any knife. Shade's gaze flicked to Mercy. You did this, Shade whispered. Not accusation, fear. Mercy swallowed blood. I broke it, he rasped, so it can't stay in me. Shade's breathing quickened. He looked down at his own hands, at his knife, at the calm he had worn like armor. He whispered, no. But the ink didn't care about his refusal. It cared about the story he told himself. I'm necessary. I'm just what I am. Shade's eyes widened as if he could feel the ink trying to climb into him. He jerked back. He looked at Mercy with something like desperation. How do you stop it? Shade asked. Mercy's vision blurred. He was fading, but he forced the words out. You tell the truth, Mercy whispered. And you pay. Shade's mouth twisted. I can't, he hissed. Mercy's gaze hardened. Yes, he said. You can. You just don't want to. Shade's hands shook. Fox sobbed behind him, still on his knees, still unraveling. The entity in the air pressed down, furious, hungry. It wanted someone to justify. Shade's eyes darted to Lena, and Mercy saw it, the flicker of calculation, the easiest justification, the oldest lie. I have to. It's necessary. Shade lunged, not toward Mercy, toward Lena. Lena screamed. Mercy moved on instinct, pain screaming through him. He threw himself forward, catching Shade's wrist in his blood-slick hand. Shade's knife flashed. Mercy felt it slice across his shoulder, hot. He grunted, teeth bared. Lena stumbled back, terrified. Mercy shoved Shade hard. Shade crashed into the table, candles toppled. Fire flared. Smoke filled the room. The entity screamed, furious joy now, because violence was its language. Shade scrambled up, eyes wild. You'll doom us, Shade snarled. You'll doom yourself. Mercy laughed, wet. I'm already doomed, he rasped. You just wanted to be the one holding the leash. Shade's face contorted. He raised his knife again. Mercy didn't have strength for a fight. So he did the only thing left. He spoke a name. Not Shade's title, not his mask. The thing beneath. Aaron, Mercy said. Shade froze. His eyes widened. Fox's sobbing hitched. Mother Gray had told Mercy once, years ago, that names were ropes. She hadn't lied. Shade, Aaron, stared at Mercy like he'd been struck. No one, he whispered, voice shaking, calls me that. Mercy's voice was rough. I read the ledger, he said. It writes more than blood. Shade's hand trembled. His knife lowered a fraction. And in that hesitation, the ink found its opening. Not because Shade wanted it, because Shade had always avoided the truth. And the ink fed on avoidance like marrow. Shade gasped. His face twisted, his eyes flooded, not with tears, but with memories. He staggered back, dropping the knife. He clutched his own chest. "No," he whispered. "No." Mercy watched him, heart pounding, vision tunneling. Shade's mouth moved, soundless. Then words spilled out, raw and broken, like splinters forced from flesh. "I told myself it was law," Shade choked. "I told myself I kept order." He laughed, a sharp, terrified sound. "But I just liked being the one people feared," he whispered. "I liked being untouchable." He stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "I liked breaking them," he said, and horror flooded his voice. "Gods, I liked it." This was the punishment that fit Shade, not the knife, the mirror, the collapse of his story. He sank to his knees beside Fox, both of them shaking, both of them finally awake. The entity in the air convulsed. It had fed, yes, fed on confession, on collapse, but not the way it wanted. Not clean, not controlled, not as a seal. It wanted innocent's blood to complete ownership. Instead, it was choking on truth. Mercy swayed, nearly falling. He grabbed the edge of the table. Lena stood in the doorway now, sobbing, watching the room burn with candlelight and smoke. "Mercy," she whispered, voice cracking. Mercy looked at her. He wanted to tell her to run. He wanted to promise her safety. He had learned long ago not to promise what the world would break. So he told her the only thing he could. "Go," he rasped. "Find your mother. Wake your father. Tell them to leave." Lena shook her head, tears streaming. "What about you?" she cried. Mercy's mouth twisted. He wanted to say, "I'll be fine." He couldn't. He swallowed. "I'm paying," he said again, softer. Lena stared at him like she didn't understand. Then she did something Mercy didn't expect. She lifted her green ribbon. She untied it, fingers clumsy with tears. She stepped forward, careful, trembling, and held it out to him. "For bad dreams," she whispered, voice shaking. "So you remember you're still here." Mercy's throat tightened so hard it hurt. He stared at that small strip of cloth like it was a holy thing. His hands were slick with blood. He couldn't touch it without staining it. Lena didn't seem to care. She shoved it into his palm. Mercy closed his fingers around it. The ribbon was warm from her wrist. The knot pressed into his skin. The ink in Mercy's arm, what remained, flinched, as if burned, not by magic, by meaning, by a truth the ink couldn't digest, that Mercy could be more than a tool. Lena backed away, then ran. Her bare feet slapped the floor, vanishing into the corridor. Mercy watched her go, chest heaving. Behind him, Fox and Shade trembled, still kneeling, still breaking open. Mother Gray lay still on the floor, eyes staring at nothing. Calm, finally gone. The parlor filled with smoke, the entity pressed down like storm cloud, furious and starving. Mercy felt it coil toward him again. It wanted him back. It wanted the leash retied. Mercy looked down at his arm. The ledger lines were split and ragged. ink leaking like smoke through cracks. He could feel it trying to rewrite, trying to stitch itself together. Mercy clenched his fist around the ribbon. He took a shaky breath. "No," he whispered. "Not refusal, not denial, acceptance." He didn't justify, he didn't excuse, he didn't tell himself he was a hero. He told the truth. "I have killed. I have been used. I have used others. I have lied to survive." And then, beneath that, another truth. "I can stop lying." The entity shrieked, furious, because without justification, it had nothing to eat. The ink convulsed. Mercy felt a tearing sensation inside his chest, like a hook being yanked free. He cried out, falling to his knees. Pain flared, then loosened. The pressure in the room eased. Not gone, but less. Like a storm pulling back from the edge of the city. Fox sobbed, head in his hands. Shade whispered prayers he didn't believe. Mercy sat on the floor amid smoke and spilled wax and blood. He held the ribbon and breathed. His arm burned, his chest ached. But the ink, what remained, was quiet, not satisfied, not purring, just quiet. Like a beast that had been denied its feast and didn't yet know where to hunt next. Mercy forced himself up. He stumbled out of the parlor. The house was in chaos now. Apprentices waking, voices rising, footsteps pounding. Mercy didn't fight them. He didn't need to. He moved like a ghost through the corridors and slipped out into the night. The city air hit him like cold water. He leaned against the wall, panting. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, as if the sky had finally decided to wash something clean. Mercy laughed. Hoarse. Nothing was clean, but something had shifted. He looked down at his arm. The ledger was still there. But the lines were broken. The ink no longer flowed smoothly toward his heart. It had been cut, severed. And in the broken patterns, Mercy could see something new. Thin, pale scars where the ink had tried to write and failed. Places where it couldn't find purchase, because there was no lie there anymore. Mercy turned his face to the rain. He didn't know what came next. He didn't know if the ink would heal and return, patient as hunger. He didn't know if Mother Gray's house would collapse without her, or if someone else would take her place. He didn't know if Vardem would run, or fight, or become the kind of man who used his grief to justify cruelty. He didn't know if Lena would keep her sweetness, or if the world would steal it piece by piece. He only knew one thing. The evil the guilty created had finally begun to return to them in kind. Not as spectacle, as consequence. Systems snapping, masks cracking, stories collapsing, and Mercy, knife in hand, ribbon in fist, was no longer willing to be the tidy ending that let the world pretend it was balanced. He began to walk. The rain soaked his clothes. The city lights blurred. Behind him, somewhere in the House of Gray, the air shivered with a distant, hungry rage. Ahead, the streets stretched long and dark. Mercy touched the knot in the ribbon and felt its warmth. A promise. Not that he would be forgiven. Not that he would be clean. Only that he would remember in the worst nights that he was still here. And that if the ink tried to write him into a monster again, it would have to do it without his help. Because Mercy was done feeding it stories. He would feed it truth. and let the guilty choke on what they had made. Rain made the noble quarter smell clean. That was the lie of it. Stone scrubbed by weather, lantern light softened by mist, hedges trimmed into obedience. Mercy moved through it like a thing that didn't belong, his cloak heavy with water and blood, his breath thin enough to count. Every step pulled at him. Not the pain in his shoulder, not the torn muscle across his ribs. The deeper pain, the kind that came when you cut something out of yourself and realized how much of you it had been. He reached the red door as dawn began to pale the sky. He didn't knock. He couldn't. His hands shook too hard, and his strength had become a borrowed thing the rain was repossessing. Instead, he slipped through the side gate, into the courtyard where the tree stood hunched and black with wet leaves. The house was awake. A lantern flared in an upper window. Footsteps hurried. A servant's voice snapped, sharp with fear. Mercy stayed in shadow beneath the tree and waited until he saw Lena. She appeared at the kitchen door wrapped in a blanket too big for her, hair stuck to her cheeks, eyes red from crying. She wasn't alone. Her mother, Sarah, held her by the shoulders as if she could anchor her to the world by touch alone. Sarah's face was drawn tight with terror, the kind that made people older in a single night. Lena's gaze swept the courtyard. It snagged on Mercy. She froze. Her small hand lifted instinctively toward her wrist, and then she remembered the ribbon was gone. Remembered she'd given it away like it was nothing, like promises were easy. "Papa?" Lena whispered. Lord Vardam came into view behind them, pulling on a coat, eyes wild, jaw clenched so hard Mercy could see it from across the yard. He followed Lena's stare. He saw Mercy under the tree. For a heartbeat, Vardam's face did what men's faces did when they understood. It tried to turn what it saw into a story it could survive. Thief, rival, monster, message. Then he saw Mercy's posture. The way Mercy stood like the world had already pushed him over, and he was only delaying the fall out of stubbornness. Vardem didn't call for guards. He walked into the rain. He stopped several paces away, keeping Sarah and Lena behind him. His hands were empty, but his body was tense, ready to become a weapon if he had to. "What are you?" Vardem demanded, voice rough. Mercy swallowed. His mouth tasted of iron and smoke and the edge of whatever he'd drunk down in the House of Grey. Not a potion, not a spell, just the brutal mathematics of surviving long enough to finish what mattered. "Not your enemy," Mercy rasped. Vardam's eyes narrowed. "My daughter says someone was coming," he said. "That a man in shadows." Mercy's breath hitched. He fought to keep his knees from folding. "I was," he admitted. Sarah made a sound, half gasp, half strangled cry. Lena stepped forward before anyone could stop her. She looked at Mercy with a child's terrible clarity, seeing the blood, seeing the shaking, seeing the way the world leaned too hard against him. "You're hurt," she whispered. Mercy nodded once. Lena took another step. Sarah grabbed her, pulling her back. "Lena!" Sarah hissed, fear sharp in her voice. Mercy lifted a hand, palm out, not threatening, not pleading, just asking for a second. "I brought her back," Mercy said to Vardem, voice cracking. "Because they were coming for her." Vardam's gaze went cold. "Who?" he said. Mercy's vision swam. He steadied himself against the tree, bark rough beneath his fingers. "People who call harm necessary. Mercy whispered. People who sell it clean. Vardam stared at him, rain running off his brow. Then, very carefully, he asked, "Why?" Mercy laughed, a wet, broken sound that turned into a cough. Because he couldn't tell the whole truth. Not here. Not to a man who would turn it into a war. So he told the piece that mattered. Because she didn't deserve it, Mercy said. Silence. Then Lena, soft and trembling, said, "He didn't hurt me." Sarah's breath caught. Vardam's eyes flicked to Lena, then back to Mercy. "What do you want?" Vardam demanded. Mercy looked at the red door, the warmth behind it, the life that still existed inside those walls. Then he looked down at his own hands, blood-stained, trembling, empty. "I want her inside," he said. "Now." Vardam hesitated. Mercy's voice sharpened, urgent with what little strength he had left. "Now," he repeated, "before the city finishes waking." That did it. Vardam turned, barking orders. Servants moved. Sarah pulled Lena toward the door. Lena twisted, looking back one last time. She lifted her hand as if to wave, then stopped. Awkward, remembering she had no ribbon to touch now. Mercy, against all sense, lifted his own wrist. The green ribbon was tied there again, darkened by rain, not still holding. Lena's eyes widened. A small, fierce relief crossed her face. Then she was dragged inside, the red door slamming shut behind her like the world sealing her away from a nightmare. Mercy exhaled. The breath left him and did not fully return. His knees buckled. He slid down the tree and hit the stones hard enough to jolt pain through his ribs like lightning. The rain was cold on his face. He stared up at the branches above him, wet leaves trembling in the wind. His body tried to breathe. It failed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, like a candle starved of air. His heartbeat slowed, heavy and uneven, each thud a reluctant thing. He tasted blood again, warm, thick, and realized with a strange calm that the battle hadn't ended when he walked away from the House of Grey. It had ended when he cut the ledger in his own flesh. He had been bleeding out since then. He'd simply refused to admit it until the child was safe. A shadow crossed the courtyard. Mercy's eyes shifted, sluggish. Lord Vardam stood over him now, alone, cloak pulled tight. He must have come back out after shoving his family into safety. Vardam stared down at Mercy with a mixture of fury and something else, something complicated and dangerous. "You're dying," Vardam said. Mercy tried to smile. "Not the worst thing I've done," he whispered. Vardam's jaw tightened. "Who sent you?" Vardam demanded again, like the answer could still be turned into a blade. Mercy's vision blurred. "I'm not giving you a war," Mercy rasped. "You'll lose. The wrong people will die, and someone worse will take their place." Vardam's eyes burned. "You expect me to do nothing?" he hissed. Mercy swallowed. "No," he whispered. "I expect you to protect her." Vardam went still. Mercy's breath shuddered. "Take your family," Mercy said, voice thinning. "Leave the city, or bury yourself so deep in allies they can't reach you. But don't chase shadows." He laughed faintly at his own words, because he had become one. Vardam stared down at him, rain dripping from his lashes. "You're not a hero," Vardam said, as if accusing Mercy of pretending. Mercy's eyes fluttered. "No," he whispered. "I'm just tired." His gaze drifted toward the red door. "Tell her," Mercy murmured. "The ribbon still works." Vardam didn't answer. Mercy didn't need him to. The sky above the courtyard brightened from black to gray. The world kept going. Mercy's chest rose once, then again, then did not. The rain fell on a man who no longer felt it. For a moment, there was nothing. No ink, no pain, no city, just the quiet that waited behind every breath. And then, a sound, not heard with ears. A bell tone, deep and absolute, vibrating through whatever Mercy had become. The courtyard vanished. The rain vanished. Mercy opened his eyes to darkness that wasn't empty. Darkness with weight. Darkness with edges. Before him stood a figure with a blade that looked like it had never been used for anything but truth. Judgment. Not a rumor. Not a myth. A presence that made lies feel childish. Mercy tried to inhale and realized he had no lungs. Tried to touch his chest and realized he had no hands. He was awareness in a place where awareness mattered. Judgment regarded him as if reading a sentence. "You died," Judgment said. Mercy would have laughed if he'd had a throat. "I noticed," he replied. Not aloud, but somehow it carried. Judgment's gaze did not shift. "You returned the child," he said. Mercy's something tightened. "Yes." "You refused the seal," Judgment continued. "Yes." "You cut the leash," Judgment said. Mercy hesitated. "I tried," he answered. Judgment's eyes were dark. "You succeeded," he said. "You paid with your life." Mercy's thoughts flickered toward the courtyard, the red door, the tree, the rain. A last image of Lena's face. Judgment spoke again, and the darkness around his words felt like a courtroom listening. "Now you have a choice." The darkness stirred, expectant. Judgment lifted his blade slightly, not threatening, not offering, simply indicating the line that divided outcomes. "Final death," Judgment said. "Oblivion, no ink, no hunger, no punishment, no redemption. Just ending." The word ending fell like a stone into deep water. Mercy felt its pull, the seductive simplicity of it. To stop, to vanish, to be done. Judgment's gaze sharpened. "Or," he said, "redemption through action." Mercy's awareness steadied. Redemption. He almost rejected the word on instinct. It sounded like a clean story. It sounded like the kind of lie the ink would enjoy. Judgment corrected him without Mercy speaking. "Not forgiveness," Judgment said. "Not erasure. Not balance." He stepped closer, and the darkness tightened around Mercy like a cloak being measured. "Work," Judgment said. "Consequences. Service." Mercy's thoughts shifted, wary. "What kind of service?" he asked. Judgment's voice was iron. "To stand where harm hides behind systems," he said. "To follow the guilty when they wrap evil in necessity. to make them face what they created. Mercy felt the old ledger instinct flare, except he had no arm now, no skin for ink to write on. Judgment seemed to read the question anyway. "The ink will not leave you," Judgment said, "but it will not own you either." He lifted his left hand. In it was a strip of cloth, darkened by rain, a green ribbon. It's not intact. Mercy's awareness tightened. Shock, grief, something like pain without a body. Judgment held it out like a verdict made physical. "A promise," Judgment said. "A tether." Mercy wanted to reach for it. He couldn't. Judgment's gaze did not soften, but it sharpened into precision. "If you choose redemption," Judgment said, "you do not return as a man." The darkness behind Judgment moved, shape without substance, a shadow, not metaphor, a thing that clung to light and made it honest. "You return as what you were becoming," Judgment said. "A witness, a blade edge without the blade, the weight behind my steps." Mercy understood then, with terrible clarity. No warmth, no rest, no simple life, no pretending. He would be bound to Judgment's work like a stain bound to skin, except this time the binding wasn't a leash held by monsters. It was a chain held by truth. "A literal shadow," Mercy said. Judgment inclined his head once. "Yes." Mercy's awareness flickered. "And if I refuse?" Judgment's answer was immediate. "Then you end," he said. "Completely." Mercy stared into the darkness past Judgment's shoulder. He felt the lure of it. Quiet, emptiness, nothingness that asked nothing of him. And he thought of the red door, of Lena's small voice saying, "You're hurt," of her giving away her ribbon like goodness was natural. He thought of Mother Gray's calm collapsing, of Fox and Shade breaking open, not punished with torture, but forced to feel what they'd buried. He thought of the beast, still hungry somewhere in the world, looking for the next clean story. Mercy formed the only truth he could trust. If I vanish, it feeds. He turned his attention back to Judgment. "I don't deserve redemption," Mercy said. Judgment's gaze was flat. "Deserve is irrelevant," he replied. "Choose." Mercy held the moment like a knife. Final death, or a second existence made of consequence and labor and unclean truth. Mercy thought of Lena again, not as an excuse, as a point, a single act that had proven he was capable of choosing differently. "Give me the work," Mercy said. Judgment's blade lowered, not in approval, but in acceptance. "So be it," Judgment said. He reached out and pressed the green ribbon's knot, cold, damp, into Mercy's awareness. It burned. Not like fire. Like meaning searing itself into whatever Mercy was now. The darkness around Mercy shifted, gathering, thickening. He felt himself stretch, thin and long, pulled toward Judgment like night pulled toward a lamplight. Not dragged. Aligned. He became shape without flesh, presence without breath, a shadow that could move where Judgment moved, a shadow that could slip through locked doors, into whispered rooms, behind gilded smiles, a shadow that could listen when the guilty told themselves stories, a shadow that could make those stories turn sour. Judgment turned. The darkness became corridor, staircase, world. "You will hunger," Judgment said as they began to move. Mercy, Shadow, felt it immediately. The old ink hunger, translated into something else. Not bloodlust, not itch. A pull toward justifications, toward the places where harm dressed itself in clean words. Judgment continued, voice steady. "You will be tempted to feed it," he said, "to let it make you a weapon again." Mercy's awareness tightened. "And if I do?" Mercy asked. Judgment didn't look back. "Then you become what killed you," he said. The words landed like a sentence. Mercy felt the ribbon knot burn again, anchoring him. "No," Mercy answered. "Not a promise of perfection. A choice." Judgment stepped out into the waking city, and Mercy stepped with him. Not as a man, not as a knife, not as a story people could romanticize. As a shadow at Judgment's heel. As a second edge. As the thing that followed the guilty home and waited behind their eyes when they tried to sleep. The rain began to fall again, but Mercy no longer felt it. He only felt the weight of where they were going, and the simple, brutal truth that redemption wasn't a clean ending. It was work. So he followed. Because he had already died once. And this time, he would not spend what was left of him feeding the world's lies.
Thanks for watching Echo Forge. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe so the next tale finds you. Share this with someone who loves dark fantasy or twisted sci-fi, and I'll see you in the next world.